what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beasts, for all is vanity. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and to dust all return. Who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth? You can almost hear Solomon's lament in Ecclesiastes 3 over the howling Alaskan wind in Joe Carnahan's film The Grey, starring Liam Neeson. Now, I expected less from Carnahan. He's the director of the A-Team. I expected something a little more action-oriented, maybe a little schlockier, not the intense drama horror that this film actually represents. It captures that frigid, friction-filled isolation that the men felt in John Carpenter's 1982 The Thing. And yet, the threat they're facing isn't supernatural. It's not an alien. What they're facing is the elements themselves and the wildlife, more akin to Spielberg's horror in Jaws.
Take it now. Leave nothing in my heart. Fill me only with what I need to fight.
The deepest and maybe darkest thing about this film is that it's a treatise on naturalism. It's a narrative essay on the idea that perhaps all there is the material world, and we're nothing but creatures that come, live, and perish. And that's it. We're introduced early on into Otway's character. In fact, at the very first scene, we see a gun in his mouth. We see where he's at in his life, but yet somehow when he's thrust into the context of survival in the wilderness with these men, when he's being hunted, he manifests perhaps the most vigor, the most gusto for life and the desire to survive. And the question then is, why? It reflects back on us. Why do we struggle to survive? Why do we go on day after day, even though life is filled with brokenness and harsh times? Why do we struggle? It's a great conversation starter because, like the film's title, it's neither black or white. It's very gray. It's left for discussion, which makes this an excellent film to take a mixed group of friends to, Christians, atheists, agnostics, what have you, and dialogue afterwards. Otway's character protects the radius of a drilling station. In fact, his job is to shoot any encroachers on the territory, and then he returns to the cafeteria in the early scene, which just looks like this den of iniquity as the men are brawling and fighting. He himself describes them as unfit for mankind. And then when they're thrust into the wilderness with the wolves, they realize they're in the radius of the wolves' territory and their den. The parallel is obvious, and we see as the alpha wolf kicks out a challenger. We also see Liam Neeson contend with a challenger to his leadership of the group. The parallels are made very clear, and in fact, if you've seen the trailer and haven't seen the film yet, we all know at some point he's got electrical taped knives and broken bottles to his hands like some ghetto Wolverine, ready to go, savage, just as savage as the animals in the film. And that's the question. What if we're all just products of the natural world struggling to perpetuate our own existence? Is that what life is about? Survival for survival's sake? Is death on our feet the only hope that we have versus a death on our knees? Is that the best we have to look forward to? The film lets this question linger as we confront the conclusion. The film also presents very clearly one of the men is a man of faith. One of the men believes nothing. And Otway, somewhere in that frustrating middle, says, I wish I could believe. It reminded me as Otway leans into his father's poetry. He leans into a poem his father wrote, and it gives him some strength to continue. The poem that goes, once more into the fray, into the last good fight I'll ever know, live and die on this day. It's a poem about survival and existence. Live and die on this day. That's all Otway has to fuel him. And it reminded me of Solomon's Ecclesiastes lament about men and the beasts and they both perishing. But Solomon had a father, David, who both knew the Psalms and wrote many of them. Psalms like Psalm 49:12, where it says, man in his pomp will not remain, but he's like the beasts that will perish. Solomon's father taught him that, but also, unlike Otway's father, taught him psalms like, "This is a day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." Not just live and die on this day, survival for survival's sake, but that we have a creator and a loving God. And that he's given us this day as a treasure, and that in him we can have life that goes on eternal. The only hope, the only way then that we can have joy in this day versus mere survival. And so the wrestle at the end in this film is, man, which father would I want to believe? John Otway's father or Solomon's father, David? And in that, perhaps is there a heavenly father that offers a hope beyond either of those earthly fathers? That's what fueled me and helped me through the intense gravity of a film like The Grey. Because at the end of the day, as bleak as things are, there is a hope that transcends all of that in Jesus. I'm James Harleman, and this is Cinemagogue. Hope you've enjoyed this review. You can find more content, audio and written, as well as video at cinemagogue.com. And remember, until next time, watch to glorify.